Hi everyone, and welcome back to Pixel Cherry Ninja's channel. Today we have a very special guest, one of my favorite developers out there, and probably the reason I got into FPGA gaming. So I would like to welcome JOTEGO, better known as Jose. So before we get into it, Jose, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes. Hello, Pixel Cherry Ninja. Thank you for inviting me. Yes, I am known as JOTEGO. I am microelectronics engineer, and I've been working on these retro computing systems, I think since before COVID, since 2018 or so. I think it's the earliest source files that I have about this.
Okay. That's you. So I imagine during COVID, you probably got on with a lot of this work, like a lot of people got on with a lot of projects during that time, which maybe accelerated kind of FPGA gaming.
Yes, yes, I
Excellent.
got the CPS-1 done during COVID, I think, and that was a big project. Like a lot of people got engaged on the mid-thirds thanks to CPS, and and it definitely gave a boost to well to the scene and of course to me.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, a friend of mine that got me into Mister, one of the main reasons he got it is when CPS 1 was announced, and he kept telling me about it, and I was like, no, I'm okay with RetroArch. I'll use Run Ahead, and I went around his house. I played CPS 2, and it's the only time it felt identical to the arcade outside of the arcade. So that's when I got a Mister, when I actually played your CPS 2 course. So it's always arcade
Mm.
course for me first. Everything else is second.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, me too actually. Like I used arcades most of the time, although I like the computer course, and and I actually got my first FPGA. I got a missed because of the Atari ST core.
Okay.
But yeah, nowadays I use arcade score more.
Yeah, I mean, for me, because like I appreciate all, especially a lot of the console cores, the Amiga core, for example. The SD1 I haven't tried yet because I had the Amiga more. I like it, but when I was a child growing up, I had the Super Nintendo, I had the Mega Drive, I had a lot of the consoles. What I didn't have was arcade machines, so that's why that's always very special to me. Um, but let's go to some questions. So, guys, we had a lot of questions. There was a lot of questions, and we possibly can't go through all of them. So what I've done is I've bundled questions together. There's some questions that are going to be missed out, so I do apologize for that. But obviously, we won't have the time to cover everything. So we've gone through a selection. So Hotego, I'm gonna start with a few of the questions. So the first one here, which is probably going to be like multiple questions in one. So um, we've had a lot of questions from viewers regarding upcoming cores. Please tell us a little bit about what's the latest with them and where they may be on the JT roadmap. The ones we've had mentioned the most in the community post and over on Twitter was IGS PGM. We've had CPS 3 and the Neo Geo Pocket. And as well as that, people spoke about cores that may be on the roadmap way further down the line and not in active development. And that's like Atari Jaguar, possibly the system that supports Virtua Fighter and more superscalar games, which I know you've done some already. So yeah, what have you? What is your input on that, Hatego? Floor is yours.
Yes. Okay. So when I started developing, like I got a lot of requests at the time, and a lot of people were sending me boards. And at that time, I was actually a bit too easy about taking on things, and and I did take on too much. And I have been like paying this debt now for years, and I'm still not done with all this debt. And particularly some of the systems, like not all of the systems are equal in terms of how long it takes to develop them or how long it takes to get all the information you need to do a good job. Because like you can always assume that you know that things that an emulator is doing are the right things, but is that when you start digging and you start comparing the information and looking at things for yourself, you often find that there are things that were missing that the emulator authors didn't know and that they were struggling with too. So there is more work to do there. So if you just translate the emulator, you can finish more quickly, but then you are not pushing the knowledge, the community knowledge forward, right? So I always try to push it to the next level. And and for that systems that is very time consuming. And especially if the systems are not related to each other, because sometimes you do one system for which you have to develop like new IP, as we would call it in the industry, like a new module for something, and that new module takes a lot of work, but you can reuse it somewhere else. So now you are creating IP that is enabling other cores in a shorter time. And there is a synergy there. But sometimes that doesn't happen. And a good example of that is the new Geo Pocket. It looks like very easy on the surface because the graphics chipset is not that challenging. But then it has a very convoluted CPU that is not used anywhere else. Like there are a couple of you know not popular arcade PCBs that I think used that CPU. And then other than that, it is just in like electronics appliances like microwaves or CD-ROM readers, things like that. So it's a lot of work for that CPU that doesn't really get reused anywhere. So things like that make it challenging. But well, specifically about the ones that you have mentioned, we have the NGP, the Neo Geo Pocket.
Mhm.
The is that the code is almost there, but I think there is a bug in the CPU. It might not be in the CPU, but because the CPU is new and it's so convoluted, I always think it's there. And I've been doing some side work related to that, and I will announce that on this Friday. Maybe by the time this is aired, this
Okay.
will be known. So it will not be. I'm still not releasing the core on Friday, but I'm doing things that should help finishing that core. And this is a project that I probably should not have taken. I should have left this for Robert Pape, who likes consoles more than I do. Like the Atari Jaguar, I should have left that one to him too.
Mhm.
But well, yeah, I just took this commitment, so I will finish this too. But I don't plan to work on more consoles. I plan to focus on arcade cores.
Okay. And just is there anything you'd like to mention about like the PGM or CPS3? Because we know I think CPS3 maybe around 6, 7 months ago you said if we continue working at the rate we are, it will take 18 months. Are we? Do you think we'll still be in that rough time frame? Because obviously we know delays usually occur. So do you think we'll have CPS2 sometime in 2025? Only if you're able to answer that. If obviously I don't want to put you on the spot or anything like that. If it takes longer, it takes longer.
Yeah, I think that for CPS3, it's about whether we continue doing the chip uh, reverse engineering or not. And that schedule that I gave was assuming we did that.
Mm.
And we actually stopped there because I just like the only person I have who is doing that type of work. If I commit her to do that, then she cannot do any of the other stuff. So I cannot really commit someone for 18 months because I don't have the resources.
Uh, okay.
So so I halted that, then discussing whether to um, you know pay a company to do that kind of RE. Like I know there is a company in Cork in Ireland that does that. We were discussing that. That would probably be a lot of money that maybe we can do some fundraising on the internet or something to pay for that. But then I was also afraid of making too much noise about this, and maybe Capcom wouldn't be happy about that. I don't know
Okay.
whether yeah, I'm not 100% sure of whether they can do something about that or not, because like this company in Cork is like, I mean, they do that for a living, right? I mean, they crack chips open and they expose them for a living. Now, Whether they polish the results or not, I don't know, because I know that they do that for other companies, but maybe that's okay. Maybe it's not okay if you publish that in the open
Okay,
to
okay. So I guess best
find
ways
legal.
there's options available. It just depends what the kind of best course of action to take would be. So I guess best ways kind of yet to be decided.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Okay, right. Let's move over to the next one. So for the next one, we've also got a few questions of certain cores and there being a possibility of those getting an FPGA implementation on supported platforms, and that's cores like the multicolor Laser 6000, the Sega Model 2, and there's like a Brazilian console that's been mentioned a few times, which is the Zibo. I don't really know much about it. I did have a quick look at it on Wiki, and then finally the 3DO.
Yes. So as I said, like I want to focus on arcade systems, and in that list, I think it will only be the
The Model
Sega
2.
system,
Okay, yes.
Model 2.
O-
Yes. And that one would be interesting. It's also true that I have not done any 3D system yet, and if I did that one, it would be after the Virtua Fighter one, because that I
okay.
like to go a little bit, in the chronological order when I can.
No, that's definitely nice. It was definitely CPS 1 before, then it was CPS 1.5, then CPS 2, and hopefully sometime in the future CPS 3. So that definitely makes sense. Um, okay, so the next part we're on is some questions about the Unlock Pocket. So over here, so you're one of the developers who has brought out many releases for the Unlock Pocket. I mean, as far as I think arcade cores goes, no one's brought more games than yourself onto the Unlock Pocket. And many viewers on my channel are actually very grateful for this, and they actually really do even appreciate going onto your Patreon and having access to the beta, because they believe it's very good value, and so do I. I think it's very good value for what you offer, early access to the games and a whole bunch of stuff for the Unlock Pocket. So one of the questions that we got for the Unlock Pocket again, going back to what you said of not doing console cores, we'll bear that in mind. But we're just talking about this as is this something that can possibly be released on the Unlock Pocket? So someone has asked, do you think something like the Mega CD or the Sega CD, would it be possible to run on the Unlock Pocket, given the fact that we've had the PC Engine CD on there now? This isn't from the perspective that you're going to develop it, just from the perspective that would you think it can fit on the Unlock Pocket?
Yes. From a technical point of view, I think that yes, that it can fit. That probably the challenge there with how you read the CD-ROM, how you interface with the firmware of the Pocket. But I guess that's already solved because they did that for the PC Engine CD. So assuming you can get that going well with the open FPGA resources that Analog has now, then I don't think there is a problem with the rest of the logic itself. I know that there is FMV there, so there is some kind of video compression, but I guess that in the PC Engine there was that too. So I think it should be okay. Yes.
Okay, I know everyone's kind of excited for the next updates to OpenFPGA to see what it brings, or more importantly, what limitations that Analog have placed that it actually removes. Because a lot of developers I speak to, for example, like with the Amiga core, the keyboard and the mouse implementations is a little bit difficult due to some limitations put on. So once they get removed,
Yes. Yes.
they can make compatibility or just how it feels a lot better.
Yes, some of the design choices that they made for the firmware were not the best ones.
Ah,
Like they actually put a lot of thought in, into the firmware, and they tried to do it like very sophisticated, but they put the sophistication where it wasn't needed, and so it became convoluted, and the features were not there. Like the keyboard has a very funny interface, for instance, that is not convenient from the hardware point of view. It's convenient if you are doing software, you don't care. But the thing is that you're not doing software, you're doing hardware. And so there are a lot of things about that firmware that make it hard to work with. But at the same time, from the point of view of the user, the system is great. Like it's just that the developer has to suffer, these small things.
I've definitely heard that from many developers, including yourself. So, well, hopefully by the end of the year, I think they said by Christmas, so by the 25th of this month, we should be seeing updates to the Analog Pocket firmware and the Open FPGA one. And I certainly hope they've taken on board some of the recommendations that you've requested.
Yes,
Oh,
nice. Because I think it's a great system that it can have it already has a very good present, but it can have an even brighter future.
ah, excellent. I mean, I love handheld gaming, so I'm a big fan of the Pockets. I absolutely love it when your calls come on there. I film them a lot on Mr. Play Hit, but I end up playing a lot of them on the go on the Analog Pocket. So okay, right, okay. So here we go. Next question. What are the limitations that you see with the Analog Pocket, and more importantly, is there a way to potentially boost its power via the cartridge slot?
Yes, the cartridge slot has a kind of hardware limitation too because it does a voltage conversion. So it requires 5-volt devices there. And then that gets internally converted to 3 volts. But having to use a 5-volt interface limits the speed. So electrically, like I don't think you can put like 100 megahertz interface there for memory access. Maybe, yeah, I don't know. Probably not. Probably you cannot get to that speed. So you can use it. You can use it like for extra memory, things like that, but you cannot go to a very high speed. I think that that port is very interesting to actually connect cartridges, like to connect the new Geo Pocket cartridges. I'm hoping to be able to use that to connect the real cartridges there.
Okay. Yeah, I
Maybe
don't
something
think
like
those are. I think those are. They've been delayed for next year. The additional cartridge adapters. So hopefully they'll come some point next year from Analog.
yes. I do have a prototype for the new Geo Pocket adapter, so I know that this is not just something that they announced, that they actually have devices and they are experimenting with that.
Okay. Oh, that's
So
that's that's good to know. That will give some people a nice bit of hope then.
yes. I mean, this is like when they say they have something. I mean, they are working on it. So
Okay. Oh no, that's good. I mean, they have a lot of talent. Analog. They have a lot. They have a few good developers. So yeah, no doubt. Um, a technical question here. So there was a few viewer ones we kind of put together, but Brian Birkenbein, he always asks good technical questions whenever I do a community post. So Brian's asked, uh, I've seen some FPGA developers use KiCad to create schematics before starting their work. Is KiCad used as part of the development process? For example, schematics converted to Verilog automatically, or is this for future reference in developing the core?
so what we do as regularly is we start off the schematics. Sometimes we have official schematics, sometimes we don't. So when we don't, we we get an original PCB, we extract the schematics for it, and the process usually takes between 2 and 3 weeks. Like if we finish in 2 weeks, like we've been very good. So 3 weeks is the typical time it takes. So we do everything, but like we do it in a it's a very professional way. We check electrical rules. We get the schematics that are good for production if we were going to actually produce the board. And with that, we get the relationship of all the components, and the code is built based on the schematics. So the code is based on that, and then on information available maybe from the chip manufacturers. When the chips are private, then maybe from emulators. Basically, the MAME project or MAME is a very good source of information. And then when we have custom chips, we try to get information about them either by poking them, because you can connect them to to some testing device and find out what they are doing, or developing like new software for the arcade system that runs and that drives those custom chips in a way that will unveil what they are doing. And if but in some cases you actually have to crack it open and look at what is inside, and we don't do that let's say in home. Here we have done a little bit of that, but there are people who are much better at doing that, like Fortec or Scatis. Scatis 77 is also good at doing that. And so we try to rely on the research that these people do for those chips. So yes, so the answer is that yes, the schematics are vital, and if I see any arcade core that is done without the schematics, then I just don't consider it to be like a good core. And I have it in the to-do list. Like even if it was already polished by someone else, that is a core that I don't consider to be done.
Okay. And kind of the next question kind of relates to that, where someone asks, how necessary is it to have the OG board in order to port to FPGA? Now, say if you don't have the board, but you have all the schematics, could you do that without having the board, or is a board essential for you?
If I have the schematics, the board is often not needed.
Okay.
The schematics already tell you like everything. If you have a custom chip for which you have no information, then you need the board, or you need access to that chip. Maybe you have that chip on a different board, and then you can research it on that different board.
Ah,
Yeah, like there are some games like Ghosts and Goblins, the first one I did, like the official schematics have all the information you need. So, or
mhm,
well, 1942 is a better example actually, because in Ghosts and Goblins there is a hidden section in the sound module. But
mhm.
for 1942, you have all the chips and all the connectivity in the schematics, and these are off the shelf chips, so you know all about them. So you don't need the board at that point.
Okay, so someone that was looking to get into development didn't have hardware, but had like some knowledge of like developing and wanted to get into FPGA development. As long as they got schematics that were complete, they could start without investing in arcade hardware. So that's actually good to know. Um,
Yes, exactly.
So what is the what's so far out of the many calls you've done? I mean, you've done a lot of calls, and a lot of the calls that you've done, especially the arcade ones, are games that I personally played in the arcade. You know, stuff like Dragonninja, CPS 1, CPS 2, Aliens. There's just a whole bunch there. Bubble. But out of everything that you worked on, what would you say was the hardest so far? I know Outrun, you worked on for a long time, that presented some challenges. Currently there's the Neo Geo Pocket that's presenting challenges, but which one, like if you had to say one, the core that would have made you almost pull out your hair, which core would that be?
Yeah, I think Outrun would be that core, because um, well, all the games that have many CPUs talking to each other are always a bit hard to work with, because if you have a problem in the communication, then everything is going to fall apart, and it's hard to debug it, and you cannot easily compare to what the emulators are doing, because they get all the timing wrong there, because the communication doesn't happen at the same time. So it's hard to compare, because if you only have like one CPU, um, in some cases you can do one-to-one comparisons between what the emulator is running and what the FPGA is running in the CPU. But when you start adding timing to the problem, then the two are completely out of sync. So you cannot really match them. And so Outrun had that, but that actually didn't go too bad. Like the big problem was all the sprite circuitry, and the fact that you couldn't render that in time. That there was like the bandwidth of that game is, I don't remember how many megabytes per second it's moving, but it's moving a lot of them. And just you like in order to do that, the original board had had a frame buffer just for the sprites. Like other elements in the screen were rendered on the fly, but not the sprites. The sprites were rendered one frame ahead. Of memory that you need for that is, I think it was like half a megabyte, which doesn't, it may sound like little, but at the time that was more memory than any home computer. Like on that board there was more RAM memory than on an Amiga computer.
Wow.
And that memory was just, to draw the sprites. And even if your SDRAM has like 128 megabytes at 100 megahertz or whatever, when you try to access that with the kind of timing that you need for this, uh, you cannot. It is not fast enough to do this, because these systems, these arcade systems, are massively parallel. You have a lot of circuits accessing to a lot of memory chips at the same time. So even if each one of these chips looks like it, oh, well, this is just 8 bits at maybe 8 megahertz, this is not that fast. Yeah, but maybe you have 16 of them.
Ah, got
So,
it.
so it quickly adds up, and it becomes like very fast.
Right,
So
okay.
that's something that you didn't see in comparisons at the time. Like when people were talking about this, they were talking about 8-bit CPUs, 16-bit CPUs, but you have games that have 8-bit CPUs, like again, like Ghosts and Goblins, that you couldn't duplicate well in 16-bit machines, like an Amiga again. Even if the Amiga had like 16 bits, you couldn't, because you had many more components working in parallel in the arcade system, whereas in the computer system there was like this guy who had to do everything in a serial manner, one task after the other.
Oh, okay, okay. I did actually find the Atari ST. I used to play around my uncle's a lot. I did get one much, much later, but the Amiga's what I had. But I did find it was a mixed bag. Like some games were terrible ports, but then some were just really, really so amazing on the Atari ST and the Amiga. Okay.
Yes, I remember Bomb Jack, for instance, was very good in the Atari ST. It was a very good conversion.
Okay, yeah. But I mean, to be honest, Bomb Jack was good even on the Spectrum. It was just I don't actually remember playing like a bad version of that game. It was a classic, you know. Um, okay, right. What is a chord that you have developed that you're particularly proud of? You know, out of all the work you've done, which is the one that you thought, you know what, done it. I'm so happy. This is the one that I'm proud of. This is the one that I want people to remember me by.
So I'm proud. Like sometimes when I get something that is very well designed and it's very well engineered, and then I'm proud of it. Like as a 21st century microelectronics engineer, so I'm proud of it, and I can say, look, I can show this to, to peers in the industry, in the 21st century microelectronics industry, and say, look, this is a good job. And for instance, that would be things like the Q sound system in CPS. I think that the design of the DSP there was, I think that they did a good job there, because it was like very, it was elegant in terms of simple, in terms of how it gets everything working in a very straightforward way. So very well, that DSP work was done in a month, which is like good time.
Hmm.
So yeah, so that would be an example of the technical side of things. Then from the retro point of view, I'm proud of the cores where I am sure that they are completely accurate. And those could be, for instance, again, some games for which we are sure that we have 100% of the information, like again, things like Ghosts and Goblins would be like that, 1942. Then for most of the CPS games, we have all the information too, so they should be perfectly accurate. And if not, and if we find something, then then it is actually a bug, and we can fix it. It's not that we don't know what we are doing, it's that that we make mistakes. But sometimes we have unknowns there. Like an example would be like in Thunder Cross that I released last week as a beta. Like there is a small chip there that we don't know what it does, but we can emulate its function because we know what the main CPU is expecting from that chip. So that's where an emulation may occur inside the FPGA because you know that you cannot re-implement the system, you cannot redesign it because you don't know the system. So you are just faking the behavior. So in that case, we call that an emulator. But what we do when we have cases like that is that, well, we finish off with that part of the system emulated, and then we try to investigate that and we try to fix that in the future. And we have already done that a few times. There would be another example of that coming up on Friday. And we are investigating that other one with the help of Fartech. We are investigating that chip in that Konami board in Thunder Cross.
Right, yeah, I remember you mentioning that in the post related to Thundercross where Vertec was interested. So that's awesome. So we expect we will get information and 100% accuracy on that some point in the future. That's awesome to hear. It's your it's your kind of attention to detail that I just find very, very refreshing. It's like, okay, even though it feels good, everything here, because you're not 100% sure and you're basing it on emulation, you want to understand it and implement it in the most perfect way.
Yes. I think that what we do on FPGA is, I don't know how to compare. This is like a Ferrari, right? I mean, people already have cars, so
Mm.
they don't need another car. They already have like MAME, DetroArch. Like there are many options there. But if you want to feel the real feeling of driving, you need a Ferrari. So I think we have to give that experience on the FPGA system. So it has to be the Ferrari of retro hardware.
And definitely it delivers that. Like, so me personally, I still use a lot of emulation. I'm quite happy with it. There's I like Shadow Dance, so I'm really looking forward to Sega System 18. But for now, when I put it on RetroArch and I put Run Ahead on, it does a decent job. Now, like generally, if there's games I haven't played in the arcade, I don't feel too much in it because I don't know the game well. But there's a few games like there's some of your cores, CPS1, CPS2, stuff like the New Zealand story. When I played the FPGA implementation, it just feels right. It feels very, very responsive and closer to the arcade. Then there's some cores that Darren O and the Track 17 have done that I played in the arcade, like the Jellicoe Mega System 1, Saint Dragon, Outzone, for example. Like when I played them on the Mister, it just felt right, and it's difficult to explain because it's the feeling you get when you play it. When you play it, it feels right. Whereas on emulation, if you know something well, it can feel a little bit off. Even though you've got stuff like Run Ahead on there, there's certain things they just feel out. It's difficult to explain it, but when you play it, you get that feeling. It depends on how well you know the game, I suppose.
Is it happens because even like they can do tricks to fix a little bit the fact that the graphics are not happening when they should, which is this run ahead trick. But there are other things that they cannot fix, and particularly what I was discussing before of systems where you have many CPUs talking to each other.
Hmm.
Like that, the emulator doesn't do that, right? It doesn't do it by design because it's designed to emulate a part of the system for a while and then emulate another part. So that's not the way the original system works. Like in the original system, when sound should happen, the one CPU tells the other CPU to produce the sound, and that can happen in the middle of a frame. It often happens in the middle of a frame, so it will sound different because the sound just doesn't occur at the same time.
Hmm.
That's actually one of the things people realize early is that the sound is different because the communication between the sound CPU and the other chips in the sound subsystem also happens, in real time. It happens when it has to happen. And because the ear is more sensitive to these small variations, like visually, it is hard to notice differences that are, below 0.1
Mm.
second. But your ear can distinguish things that are much faster than 100 milliseconds. I don't remember where the limit is, but it is well below 100 milliseconds. Because 100 milliseconds, like if you compare to the speed at which we talk, like the phonemes are faster than that. So yeah, so all these things you can feel them. You can feel them when you play. But it's just difficult to describe. To say this is what's happening. In this game, and that's why I prefer to play it here and not there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, there's people like other friends of mine that I've introduced to the Mister, and guys that we used to play stuff in the arcade. When I've shown them that they haven't played for a long time, and they're okay. This feels very very real, to compared to like MAME or Retro Arch or anything else. So yeah, no, I completely get that. Um, okay, moving on to this one here. Who is your favorite FPGA developer? And you can't pick yourself, Jose.
And so yeah, well, I like the people who do the proper research on things and try to do the best they can. And of course, I like the people who are also producing this new research work, like as I said before, like Farter or Scatis are producing new research. Um, and then there are people who are not being faithful to the original system, but that are adding value in a different way, and that can be fun too. So as long as we we don't know what we are doing, then I don't mind if you are creating like these intermediate things, like for instance, maybe an example of that is yeah, well, I suppose what could be a good example of that? Like I think we see that more in console ports where they are having like a lot of innovations that make the user experience like better or more fun, but they were not in the original system. Right?
Uh,
Like for instance, like playing two Game Boys on the same screen, like you couldn't do that with the original system.
mhm.
Um, in order to do that, you're actually messing up the hardware a lot in a way that I don't like from an engineering point of view because it takes like the preservation part a little bit away, but it's very enjoyable. So, so you know,
Definitely.
so so that's good too. So
Okay, no, no, I get that. I mean, the good thing is we have the option to play it like the original, but then if we want to play, like you said, the Game Boy 2 player on one screen on the Mister, we can actually do that. So no, that's a fair point. Uh, okay, so right, so how like so you hold down a full-time job. Obviously, you've got your Patreon that you manage, which isn't an easy thing as well. You've got your side job of developing FPGA cores, and you've got your family life as well. Like just be with work, YouTube, and family, it's difficult to find the time. So how do you do it?
yes, that's a good question. So like normally most of the time the retro work is not stressing, although sometimes it has been. So I try not to talk too much about dates because then if I say a date, I try to fulfill it, then it can become stressful. So I
Mm,
try not to talk too much about the future in post. So that takes the stress down because I'm not really going to get more work done just by saying that I'm going to do it, but I'm going to get more stress about it.
mm.
So I try not to say that. Then I yeah, I also try not to work after 8:30 in the evenings, so I can have a bit of family life after that time. And well, yeah, it's like yeah, if like I have there are a couple of employees thanks to the the money of Patreon, and that helps doing a lot of tasks that are very time consuming, and that it would and that are not enjoyable, like dealing with the government for the taxes and all that. That's something that I don't like, and you have to deal with them once every 3 months.
Ah,
And it used to take me like a couple of days to do that. So another is a person that, among many other things, does that thing too. So I can focus on core development. I haven't been successful in hiring a person to actually help with the Verilog RTL code. I have tried 3 times. The 3 times has not worked. I've tried with people, with a person from a trade school, then a person with an engineering degree in electronics, but it was a new graduate and it was a disaster too. Then I tried with an experienced software developer, but didn't work either. So yeah, so I'm kind of giving up on that because I just cannot pay what what a microelectronics engineer is getting in the market with the money I have from Patreon. So until the Patreon makes more money, I think I'm not going to try to hire a hardware engineer again.
okay. So just a message to anyone out there: if you do want to join JOTEGO and you're willing to work for under the market value because you've got an interest in it or you want to help, then maybe you can make contact. And the other thing is, I want to give JOTEGO's Patreon a plug. Now, I'm not financially associated with JOTEGO or anything. I'm a person that was a fan of JOTEGO. I started my YouTube channel, and a year and a half later, and during the course of the channel, we spoke. But I've always promoted JOTEGO's Patreon because even the lowest tier, which is £3 a month, gets you access to betas. Now, if you've got an Analogue Pocket or a Mister, I know it supports other platforms such as the Mist and the SiDi as well. But for me in particular, I've got the Analogue Pocket and the Mister. It gets me a whole load of content. I understand it's not for everyone, and the cause are released publicly later. But obviously, if you want to see further development and kind of help innovation in this area, then I do really think it's big value. And this is not anything that I'm being paid for, anything like that. This is something I pay for myself, and I genuinely believe it's good value. So just a little mention there. I'll leave details to JOTEGO's Patreon and his Twitter in the description of the video, so feel free to check that out. Okay, what have we got here? Okay, so I'll take a kind of rounding it up a little bit. Is there
Yes.
anything coming up in the future that like you talk about or reveal? So we're having this conversation on a Tuesday. It's likely that I'll edit this today and I'll get the video out tomorrow. I generally work quite fast on YouTube. My boss is very cool at work, so once I'm at work and I've done my workload, I can actually edit as long as there's no complaints and I'm doing my job. So I'll get on with some of that. But is there anything you want to reveal? Do you want to give the guys a little hint about what's coming up on Friday, 2 days in advance?
Yes. So what we are going to do this week is we are going to revisit some old cores that had imperfections. And we're going to fix them, and I'm going to talk about a process I have designed to make sure that these things are going to be cycle accurate by design. Well, by construction is maybe a better way of explaining it,
Mm,
because these things are sometimes very hard to test, and you may have one small error here or there. Sometimes it doesn't matter, but sometimes someone actually finds that the game at is seeing is a little bit slower or faster than it should be. So it's important to, you know even if a core has already been released, to go back to the do maintenance on it and make sure that we are meeting the accuracy. And I did that for the CPS, for instance. I published, like, we got some firmware on it. I got help from Grego, uh, from Grego, who made the Final Fight Anniversary Edition. So he
mhm.
wrote some custom firmware for the CPS so we could measure speed. We compared that to the core and we adjusted until we got it right. So now I'm presenting something similar along those lines, that that is going to improve accuracy on some cores too.
Awesome. Okay, well, you know what, Rodrigo, is there, before we conclude, is there anything you'd like to add or anything you'd like to mention to the viewers? If not, then we can call this a wrap.
Hey, right, it's been great. Yes, I'm yeah. I just want to say sorry that I cannot take all the projects that people request, but yeah, but they can be sure that we are working every day and we will keep having a lot of awesome releases during next year too.
Awesome. Well, Hotego, thank you so much. I know you're a busy guy. Thank you so much for taking the time for this interview and addressing many of the viewers' questions. I look forward to Friday's release and all the future releases. And yeah, so this is goodbye. Remember, guys, if you're not subscribed to the channel, then a subscription and a like is super appreciated. I'll see you guys around. This is Pixel Cherry Ninja and Hotego out.